Blaise Pascal was a French mathematician, physicist, inventor, writer and Christian philosopher. He was a child prodigy who was educated by his father, a tax collector in Rouen. Pascal's earliest work was in the natural and applied sciences, where he made important contributions to the study of fluids, and clarified the concepts of pressure and vacuum by generalizing the work of Evangelista Torricelli.Pascal also wrote in defense of the scientific method. In 1642, while still a teenager, he started some pioneering work on calculating machines. After 3 years of effort and 50 prototypes, he built 20 finished machines over the following 10 years, establishing him as one of the first 2 inventors of the mechanical calculator. Pascal was an important mathematician, helping create 2 major new areas of research. He wrote a significant treatise on the subject of projective geometry at the age of 16, and later corresponded with Pierre de Fermat on probability theory, strongly influencing the development of modern economics and social science. Following Galileo Galilei and Torricelli, in 1646, he rebutted Aristotle's followers, who insisted that nature abhors a vacuum. Pascal's results caused many disputes before being accepted. In 1646, he and his sister Jacqueline identified with the religious movement within Catholicism known by its detractors as Jansenism. His father died in 1651. Following a religious experience in late 1654, he began writing influential works on philosophy and theology. His 2 most famous works date from this period, the Lettres Provinciales and the Pensees, the former set in the conflict between Jansenists and Jesuits. In that year, he also wrote an important treatise on the arithmetical triangle. Between 1658 and 1659 he wrote on the cycloid and its use in calculating the volume of solids. Pascal had poor health, especially after the age of 18, and he died just 2 months after his 39th birthday. Early life and education. Pascal was born in Clermont-Ferrand, which is in France's Auvergne region. He lost his mother, Antoinette Begon, at the age of 3. His father, Etienne Pascal, who also had an interest in science and mathematics, was a local judge and member of the noblesse de robe. Pascal had 2 sisters, the younger Jacqueline and the elder Gilberta. In 1631, 5 years after the death of his wife, Etienne Pascal moved with his children to Paris. The newly arrived family soon hired Louise Delfault, a maid who eventually became an instrumental member of the family. Etienne, who never remarried, decided that he alone would educate his children, for they all showed extraordinary intellectual ability, particularly his son Blaise. The young Pascal showed an amazing aptitude for mathematics and science. Particularly of interest to Pascal was a work of Desargues on conic sections. Following Desargues' thinking, the 16-year-old Pascal produced, as a means of proof, a short treatise on what was called the mystic hexagram, Essai pour les coniques, and sent it, his first serious work of mathematics, to Père Mécène in Paris. It is known still today as Pascal's theorem. It states that if a hexagon is inscribed in a circle, then the 3 intersection points of opposite sides lie on a line. Pascal's work was so precocious that Descartes was convinced that Pascal's father had written it. When assured by Mécène that it was, indeed, the product of the son and not the father, Descartes dismissed it with a sniff. I do not find it strange that he has offered demonstrations about conics more appropriate than those of the ancients, adding, but other matters related to this subject can be proposed that would scarcely occur to a 16-year-old child. In France at the time, offices and positions could be, and were, bought and sold. In 1631, Etienne sold his position as second president of the Corps des Aides for 65,665 livres. The money was invested in a government bond which provided, if not a lavish, then certainly a comfortable income which allowed the Pascal family to move to and enjoy Paris. But in 1638 Richelieu, desperate for money to carry on the 30 Years' War, defaulted on the government's bonds. Suddenly Etienne Pascal's worth had dropped from nearly 66,000 livres to less than 7,300. Like so many others, Etienne was eventually forced to flee Paris because of his opposition to the fiscal policies of Cardinal Richelieu, leaving his 3 children in the care of his neighbor Madame Saint-Haute, a great beauty with an infamous past who kept one of the most glittering and intellectual salons in all France. It was only when Jacqueline performed well in a children's play with Richelieu in attendance that Etienne was pardoned. In time, Etienne was back in good graces with the cardinal and in 1639 had been appointed the king's commissioner of taxes in the city of Rouen, a city whose tax records, thanks to uprisings, were in utter chaos. In 1642, in an effort to ease his father's endless, exhausting calculations and recalculations of taxes owed and paid, Pascal, not yet 19, constructed a mechanical calculator capable of addition and subtraction, called Pascal's calculator of the Pascal line. Of the 8 Pascal lines known to have survived, 4 held by the Musée des Arts et Métiers in Paris and 1 more by the Zwinger Museum in Dresden, Germany, exhibit 2 of his original mechanical calculators, though these machines are pioneering forerunners to a further 400 years of development of mechanical methods of calculation, and in a sense to the later field of computer engineering. The calculator failed to be a great commercial success, partly because it was still quite cumbersome to use in practice, but probably primarily because it was extraordinarily expensive. The Pascal line became little more than a toy and a status symbol for the very rich both in France and elsewhere in Europe. Pascal continued to make improvements to his design through the next decade, and he refers to some 50 machines that were built to his design. Contributions to the physical sciences. Pascal's work in the fields of the study of hydrodynamics and hydrostatics centered on the principles of hydraulic fluids. His inventions include the hydraulic press and the syringe. He proved that hydrostatic pressure depends not on the weight of the fluid but on the elevation difference. He demonstrated this principle by attaching a thin tube to a barrel full of water and filling the tube with water up to the level of the 3rd floor of a building. This caused the barrel to leak, in what became known as Pascal's barrel experiment. By 1646, Pascal had learned of Evangelista Torricelli's experimentation with barometers, having replicated an experiment that involved placing a tube filled with mercury upside down in a bowl of mercury. Pascal questioned what force kept some mercury in the tube and what filled the space above the mercury in the tube. At the time, most scientists contended that, rather than a vacuum, some invisible matter was present. This was based on the Aristotelian notion that creation was a thing of substance, whether visible or invisible, and that this substance was forever in motion. Furthermore, everything that is in motion must be moved by something, Aristotle declared. Therefore, to the Aristotelian-trained scientists of Pascal's time, a vacuum was an impossibility. How so? As proof, it was pointed out, light passed through the so-called vacuum in the glass tube. Aristotle read how everything moved, and must be moved by something. Therefore, since there had to be an invisible something to move the light through the glass tube, there was no vacuum in the tube, not in the glass tube or anywhere else. The vacuums, the absence of any and everything, were simply an impossibility. Following more experimentation in this vein, in 1647 Pascal produced Experiences nouvelles touchant la vie. which detailed basic rules describing to what degree various liquids could be supported by air pressure. It also provided reasons why it was indeed a vacuum above the column of liquid in a barometer tube. On the 19th of September 1648, after many months of Pascal's friendly but insistent prodding, Florent Perrier, husband of Pascal's elder sister Gilberta, was finally able to carry out the fact-finding mission vital to Pascal's theory. The account, written by Perrier, reads: "The weather was chancy last Saturday. Around 5 o'clock that morning, the Puy de Dôme was visible, so I decided to give it a try. Several important people of the city of Clermont had asked me to let them know when I would make the ascent. I was delighted to have them with me in this great work. At 8 o'clock we met in the gardens of the Minim Fathers, which has the lowest elevation in town. First I poured 16 pounds of quicksilver into a vessel, then took several glass tubes, each 4 feet long and hermetically sealed at one end and opened at the other. Then placed them in the vessel. I found the quicksilver stood at 26 inches and 3½ lines above the quicksilver in the vessel. I repeated the experiment 2 more times while standing in the same spot. Produced the same result each time. I attached one of the tubes to the vessel and marked the height of the quicksilver and asked Father Chaston, one of the Minim brothers, to watch if any changes should occur through the day. Taking the other tube and a portion of the quicksilver, I walked to the top of Puy de Dôme, about 500 fathoms higher than the monastery, where upon experiment, found that the quicksilver reached a height of only 23 inches and 2 lines. I repeated the experiment 5 times with care, each at different points on the summit. Found the same height of quicksilver in each case. Pascal replicated the experiment in Paris by carrying a barometer up to the top of the bell tower at the church of Saint-Jacques de la Boucherie, a height of about 50 meters. The mercury dropped 2 lines. In the face of criticism that some invisible matter must exist in Pascal's empty space, Pascal, in his reply to SGN Null, gave one of the 17th century's major statements on the scientific method, which is a striking anticipation of the idea popularized by Karl Popper that scientific theories are characterized by the falsifiability. In order to show that a hypothesis is evident, it does not suffice that all the phenomena follow from it. Instead, if it leads to something contrary to a single one of the phenomena, that suffices to establish its falsity. His insistence on the existence of the vacuum also led to conflict with other prominent scientists, including Descartes. Pascal introduced a primitive form of roulette and the roulette wheel in his search for a perpetual motion machine. Legacy. In honor of his scientific contributions, the name Pascal has been given to the SI unit of pressure, to a programming language, and Pascal's law. And as mentioned above, Pascal's triangle and Pascal's wager still bear his name. Pascal's development of probability theory was his most influential contribution to mathematics. Originally applied to gambling, today it is extremely important in economics, especially in actuarial science. John Ross writes, probability theory and the discoveries following it changed the way we regard uncertainty, risk, decision-making, and an individual's and society's ability to influence the course of future events. Quote, however, it should be noted that Pascal and Fermat, though doing important early work in probability theory, did not develop the field very far. Christian Huygens, learning of the subject from the correspondence of Pascal and Fermat, wrote the first book on the subject. Later figures who continued the development of the theory include Abraham de Moivre and Pierre-Simon Laplace. In literature, Pascal is regarded as one of the most important authors of the French classical period and is read today as one of the greatest masters of French prose. His use of satire and wit influenced later polemicists. The content of his literary work is best remembered for its strong opposition to the rationalism of René Descartes and simultaneous assertion that the main countervailing philosophy, empiricism, was also insufficient for determining major truths. In France, prestigious annual awards, Blaise Pascal chairs are given to outstanding international scientists to conduct the research in the Île-de-France region. One of the universities of Clermont-Ferrand, France, Université Blaise Pascal, is named after him. The University of Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, holds an annual math contest named in his honor. Pascalian theology has grown out of his perspective that we are, according to Wood, born into a duplicitous world that shapes us into duplicitous subjects, and so we find it easy to reject God continually and deceive ourselves about our own sinfulness. Roberta Rossellini directed a filmed biopic, Blaise Pascal, which originally aired on Italian television in 1971. Pascal was a subject of the first edition of the 1984 BBC Two documentary, Sea of Faith, presented by Don Cupitt. Works: Essai pour les coniques, Expériences nouvelles touchant la vie, Traité du triangle arithmétique, Lettres provinciales, de l'esprit géométrique, écrites sur la signature du formulaire, Pensées